The Nevada sun was a merciless hammer, beating down on the alkali flats of the Black Rock Desert. It baked the ground into a cracked, white canvas and sent shimmering waves of heat mirage dancing over the distant targets of the Desert King Invitational. This was a gathering of eagles, a place where legends of the long-range world came to test their mettle. The air was thick with the scent of burnt cordite, gun oil, and the dry, dusty smell of the playa. Laughter, low and confident, rumbled through the assembly of shooters. They were a brotherhood of muted colors: khaki, olive drab, and tan camouflage patterns designed to melt into the earth. Into this sea of tactical beige stepped Anya Petrova. She moved with a quiet, liquid grace that seemed at odds with the rugged environment. But it wasn't her silent confidence that drew every eye. It was the rifle she carried. It was a custom-built nemesis, a masterpiece of engineering, but its stock was painted a deep, arterial crimson. It wasn't just red. It was the color of a fresh wound, a defiant slash of scarlet against the desert's pale palette. A chorus of chuckles and condescending murmurs followed her to the firing line. "Look at that," a burly ex-Marine sneered to his partner. Someone brought their parade rifle. Another chimed in. Must be her first competition. She'll learn. They saw the color as a sign of vanity, the mark of an amateur who cared more for appearance than performance. They saw her as a novelty, a mockingbird among hawks. Anya heard it all, but her expression remained a placid mask. She didn't offer a retort or a defensive glance. She simply unrolled her shooting mat, the movements economical and precise. Dropping prone, she settled behind the crimson rifle, her body becoming one with the earth. Her breath steadied, her pulse slowed, and the world narrowed to the circular view through her scope. 1,000 meters away, a steel plate shimmered in the heat. She made a few minute adjustments to her scope, her fingers dancing over the turrets, scribbled a quick notation in a worn leather notebook, and then she became utterly still. The rifle cracked, a sharp, singular report that cut through the desert air. For a full second, there was silence. Then, a faint ping echoed back across the flats, the unmistakable sound of a perfect center-mass strike. The laughter died instantly. It was replaced by a silence so profound it felt like a physical weight pressing down on the range. The man who had been joking moments before now stared, first at the distant, swinging target, and then at the woman with the crimson rifle. They didn't understand what they had just seen, but they know, Wita Sudan, chilling certainty, that this was no amateur. The weapon wasn't a parade piece. It was a statement, and they were only just beginning to understand what it said. Weeks later, the elite of the nation's marksmen converged on Fort Bragg, North Carolina. This wasn't the informal challenge of the desert. This was the All-American Long-Range Championship, the undisputed den of lions. The cavernous assembly hall buzzed with energy, a palpable fusion of pride and tension. The air smelled of freshly cleaned steel and the subtle, sharp temps of military-grade coffee. It was a sea of hardened faces and powerful builds. Stoic Army Rangers spoke in low tones in one corner. A boisterous group of Marine Scout snipers shared war stories in another, and a clique of polished, civilian competition shooters, sponsored and serene, discussed wind variables and barrel harmonics. Amidst this congregation of tactical titans, Anya Petrova's arrival was a quiet disruption. She registered last, her name unfamiliar, her unit listed simply as unattached. She was a ghost at the feast, and the lions dismissed her as such. That is, until she uncased her rifle. The moment the crimson stalk emerged from its protective foam, a ripple of recognition and renewed skepticism spread through the whole. The story of the Scarlet Mockingbird of the Nevada desert had traveled on the wind, but here, among the truly proven, it was treated as a fluke, a tall tale. One man, in particular, took vocal offense. Master Gunnery Sergeant Jocks the Hammer Connolly was a living legend in the Marine Corps. A man carved from granite and fury, with a chest full of medals and eyes that had seen the worst of the world from 1,000 yards away. He saw Anya's rifle and let out a humorless bark of a laugh. "Well, I'll be," he boomed, his voice silencing the conversations around him. Someone finally decided to paint a target indicator on their own weapon. In a real fight, sweetheart, that color just tells the enemy where to shoot first. Anya met his gaze, her expression unreadable. She didn't rise to the bait. In a real fight, "Master Gunnery Sergeant," she replied, her voice calm and even. "They never see me in the first place." A few of Jox's fellow Marines chuckled, but Jox's eyes narrowed. It wasn't the response of a novice. It was the cold confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was capable of. The whispers about Anya intensified. Was she some billionaire's daughter playing soldier? A marketing gimmick for a new rifle company? No one knew, and that mystery was more unsettling than any boast. Jox watched her walk away, a knot of irritation and something akin to professional curiosity tightening in his gut. He had spent his life in a world of rigid order and clear hierarchies. Anya Petrova, with her quiet defiance and her blood-red rifle, fit into none of them. The initial stages of the competition were a brutal test of fundamentals. At 700 and 1,000 meters, the margin for error was razor-thin. But for the masters gathered at Fort Bragg, it was simply a warm-up. Yet, as the day wore on, a pattern emerged. While even seasoned champions like Jox Connolly had shots drift by inches due to a sudden gust or a misread mirage, Anya's rounds landed with the unnerving consistency of a machine. Her group at 1,000 meters was a single, ragged hole. Jox watched her through his spotting scope, not as a competitor, but as a predator studying its prey. Her form was unlike anything taught in the Marine Corps Scout Sniper School. It was calm, clinical, and devoid of any wasted motion. While others squinted and cursed the shifting winds, Anya seemed to be in a world of her own. Between rounds, she didn't talk or stretch. She simply sat, her back straight, and wrote in her worn, leather-bound notebook. Curiosity finally got the better of him. During a break, he walked past her position, glancing down at the open book. It wasn't filled with simple wind calls and elevation adjustments. The pages were a dense tapestry of complex equations, hand-drawn charts, mapping barometric pressure against humidity and intricate formulas for calculating the Coriolis effect, spin drift, and even the Magnus effect, the subtle dip a bullet takes from its own rotation. She was scribbling figures and running calculations faster than most shooters could adjust their scopes. As the distances stretched to 1,800 meters, the field thinned. The wind, whipping across the open range, became a malevolent, imbecibly force. It was here that skill separated from luck and science from guesswork. Jox, relying on decades of instinct, put 3 solid hits on target. Then it was Anya's turn. She spent a full minute just watching the grass sway, her eyes half closed. She licked a finger, holding it up to the wind. Not in a grand gesture, but a tiny, almost imperceptible movement. After one final notation in her book, she settled behind the crimson rifle, took a single, slow breath, and fired. The spotter's call came back, laced with disbelief, dead center. Jox felt a chill that had nothing to do with the wind. He was watching something that defied his training, his experience, his entire understanding of the craft. It wasn't just skill. It was something deeper, a communion with the chaotic elements of ballistics that he couldn't comprehend. He wasn't just losing to a competitor. He was being outmaneuvered by a ghost, and her weapon wasn't the rifle. It was the chilling, irrefutable logic scribbled in her notebook. As the targets were pushed out to the extreme limits of ballistics, 2,700 and then a staggering 3,800 meters, the competition ceased to be about winning. It became a showcase of the impossible. And at the center of it all was Anya Petrova. Her precision never wavered. Each shot was a masterclass in physics and intuition, her bullets arcing through miles of turbulent air to find their mark with surgical accuracy. The crowd of spectators, once dismissive, now watched in a state of reverent awe. In the observation tower, perched high above the firing line, a retired Delta Force colonel, a man with a face like a roadmap of forgotten wars, lowered his binoculars. He turned to the officer beside him and whispered a term most hadn't heard in decades, a name from the forgotten lore of black operations. Kinetic synchronization, he breathed, the words heavy with meaning. I thought that discipline died out. I thought it was just a ghost story. Down on the range, Jox Connolly overheard a fragment of the conversation relayed through a nearby radio. Kinetic synchronization. The phrase snagged in his mind. He had heard whispers of it during classified briefings, a rumored, almost mythical discipline developed by a deep black special projects unit. It wasn't just about calculation. It was about achieving a zen-like trance state, of feeling the bullet's entire flight path, of becoming one with the chaotic forces of nature. It was considered the pinnacle of marksmanship, and it was thought to have been erased from all military programs after the project was officially disbanded. That night, Jocks couldn't sleep. He sat hunched over a ruggedized laptop in his barracks room, his fingers flying across the keyboard. He ran Anya Petrova's name through every military, intelligence, and civilian database he could access with his security clearance. The result was always the same. A digital void, no service record, no tax returns, no social media footprint, no credit history. It was as if she didn't exist before walking onto that range in Nevada. She was a ghost in the machine. His suspicion festered. The next day, as the final competitors prepared for the 4,900-meter shot, he watched the range officer, Major Hinera Leba Rostova, a stern and respected figure, approach Anya. The general spoke in a low voice, but Jocks's sharp ears caught a single, devastating slip of the tongue. "The conditions are deteriorating," Commander Rostova said, a title far above Anya's supposed station. "Hold your fire until the wind stabilizes." Rostova caught her mistake instantly, her eyes flicking nervously around. But the word was already out there, hanging in the air. Commander. The pieces clicked into place for Jocks with sickening clarity. This wasn't a competition. It was a stage, and Anya Petrova was not just another competitor. She was something else. Entirely at 4,900 meters just over, 3 Melisaya struck a bullseye that drew a collective gasp from the entire gallery. The feat was so extraordinary it bordered on the supernatural, but the true test was yet to come. As the final target was set at an unprecedented 6,200 meters, the sky, which had been a clear Carolina blue, turned a bruised, angry purple. A violent thunderstorm rolled in off the coast, and the wind began to howl, driving sheets of rain horizontally across the range. The competition was on the verge of being called off. Jocks, as the challenger, was given the option to concede. His pride wouldn't allow it. In a display of heroic skill, he settled into his position, battled the gale force crosswinds, and fired. His shot was a testament to a lifetime of mastery, landing just inches from the center of the targeton, incredible feat that earned him a roar of applause. But it wasn't a hit. Then, it was Anya's turn. The wind tore at her, whipping her hair across her face and threatening to rip the rifle from her hands. Lightning spiderwebbed across the sky, followed by a deafening crack of thunder. The world was chaos, but in the heart of that storm, Anya was an island of perfect calm. She closed her eyes, her lips moving in a silent mantra, her breathing deep and rhythmic. She didn't fight the storm. She seemed to join it. As she settled the crimson stalk into her shoulder, a powerful gust of wind caught the loose sleeve of her jacket, pushing it up past her wrist. For a fleeting moment, a tattoo was revealed on her forearm. A stylized phoenix, its wings spread wide, wrapped around a compass rose. Jocks's blood ran cold. He recognized the insignia instantly. It was from a single slide in a top-secret threat assessment briefing he'd sat through years ago. It was a symbol of a defunct, deniable Black Ops unit, a team of assassins and specialists who were spoken of only in whispers. They were ghosts, tasked with impossible missions. The official name of the program was Project Chimera, but its operators knew it by another name. Project Phoenix. In that moment of recognition, Anya fired. She didn't fire against the wind. She fired with it, timing her shot for the exact split-second lull between a lightning strike and its ensuing thunderclap. The bullet, launched into the heart of the storm, seemed guided by an unseen hand. An agonizingly long time later, a flashing light on the distant target confirmed the impossible. A direct hit, dead center. The whispers about kinetic synchronization weren't ghost stories. The whispers were true, and the ghost was real. The stunned silence that followed Anya's shot was broken by Jocks Connolly's roar. "No!" he bellowed, striding onto the firing line, his face a mask of fury and disbelief. "That's not possible. I demand her rifle be inspected. Now." No one makes that shot. Not in this storm, not without assistance. His accusation hung in the electrified air. It was a formal challenge to her integrity, a charge of cheating at the highest level. Major General Rostova's face hardened, but before she could intervene, Anya calmly stood up and began to break down her crimson rifle. She laid each piece on the shooting mat with deliberate Kurtha stock. The barrel, the action, the scope. "Be my guest," she said, her voice steady. Range technicians, the best armorers in the army, swarmed to the rifle. They stripped it bare under the harsh glare of portable floodlights, their hands and instruments searching for any hidden technology. They checked for gyroscopic stabilizers, advanced wind sensors, electronic actuators in the trigger mechanism, anything that could explain her impossible performance. They found nothing. It was a masterfully built, but fundamentally analog rifle. Its crimson stock was scarred and weathered, the paint worn smooth in the places her hands and cheek had rested for thousands of hours. It wasn't a high-tech marvel. It was a well-used tool, painted by hand. As the lead technician stood to declare the rifle clean, a figure emerged from the command tent, parting the crowd like a ship through water. It was General Marcus Thorne, a 4-star with an aura of command so powerful it seemed to bend the air around him. The storm itself seemed to quiet in his presence. He walked to the center of the line, his eyes sweeping over the assembled shooters before landing on Jocks. "Your instincts are sharp, Master Gunnery Sergeant." Thorne's voice boomed, clear and commanding. "You, correct. This was not a fair competition." He then turned to Anya, a flicker of immense pride in his eyes, because this wasn't a competition at all. It was a final evaluation. Major General Rostova made no mistake when she called her commander. In fact, she misspoke. "This is Commander Anya Petrova, of United States Special Operations Command." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "And the All-American Long-Range Championship has been, for the last 6 months, a carefully orchestrated recruitment and field test for the reactivation of a program none of you were supposed to know exists." He looked directly at Anya. "Welcome back to the line, Commander. The Phoenix Initiative is officially active." A shockwave of understanding rippled through the shooters. They hadn't been competitors. They had been a benchmark, a measuring stick against which this ghost had been tested, and she had surpassed them all. The revelation was still settling over the stunned crowd when the carefully controlled environment was shattered by a burst of real-world urgency. A soldier, clad in soaking wet communications gear, sprinted from the command tent, his face pale and grim. He handed General Thorne a ruggedized tablet, its screen glowing with an encrypted flash message. The atmosphere shifted instantly. The academic air of competition evaporated, replaced by the cold, sharp edge of a live operation. General Thorne's face became a mask of stone as he read the message. He looked up, his eyes finding Anya and then Jocks. "Situation critical," he announced, his voice cutting through the rain. "CIA SAT team, Calcine Guardian, is pinned down on Glacier Spine in the Pamir Mountains, Tajikistan. They've got 2 wounded, and a large force of well-armed insurgents is closing in. They won't last until dawn." He looked at Anya, and a flicker of something personal crossed his features. "The team leader is Captain Alexei Romanov." Anya's composure, unshakable through mockery and impossible odds, finally cracked. A wave of raw emotion washed over her face, fear, anger, and fierce determination. Alexei Romanov wasn't just a name to her. He was her mentor, the man who had found her as an orphan prodigy and taught her the secrets of kinetic. He was the closest thing she had to her father. "They need a ghost," Thorne continued, his voice grim. "Someone who can neutralize the enemy's overwatch from an impossible distance and clear a path for extraction. The storm conditions there are even worse than here." He locked eyes with Anya, then turned his gaze to Jocks. "Commander Petrova is wheels up in 10 minutes. Master Gunnery Sergeant Connolly, your performance today was second only to hers. Your country is asking you to go from being her competitor to her spotter. This is a volunteer mission." Without a moment's hesitation, Jocks stepped forward. The rivalry, the suspicion, the bruised pride, all vanished, burned away by the sudden, brutal clarity of the mission. "Send me," he said, his voice a low growl. What began as a contest of skill had just become a race against time. A mission to save the man who had created the legend Jocks had just tried to tear down. The journey north was a jarring transition from the damp warmth of North Carolina to the bone-deep cold of the roof of the world. A C-17 Globemaster carried them through the night, a metal tube of grim purpose hurtling across continents. They didn't speak. They prepared. Anya field-stripped and reassembled her crimson rifle until the movements were pure muscle memory, while Jocks studied satellite imagery and topographical maps on the tablet, his mind absorbing every ridge, every crevasse, every possible enemy position. They made a high altitude, low opening halo, jump into the freezing, thin air of the Pamir Range. The fall through the dark, blizzard-choked sky was a disorienting nightmare, followed by a brutal landing on a windswept glacier. At a hastily erected forward baselet Lemoore, then a heated tent and a communications array, they received their final briefing. The maps laid out the impossible reality of their task. The trapped Guardian team was holed up in a shallow ice cave. The insurgent forces were dug in on the surrounding ridges, their snipers and heavy machine guns creating a lethal crossfire. The targets ranged from 4,300 to an almost fantastical 6,450 meters. To attempt such shots in calm weather would be considered madness. In the middle of a high-altitude blizzard, with winds gusting over 80 miles per hour and temperatures dropping to 40 below zero, it was a suicide mission. There was no time for acclimatization. Anya and Jocks began their ascent into the frozen heights, the wind and ice cutting at their exposed skin like millions of tiny blades. The air was thin, each breath a painful, burning effort. Their crampons bit into the treacherous ice as they climbed, the world around them a swirling vortex of white. Through her rifle scope, Anya could just make out the enemy positions faint. Dark shapes against the blinding snow, patrols moving like wraiths in the storm, guards posted at the mouths of caves. The extraction clock was ticking. The helicopters were 20 minutes out, and if a landing zone wasn't cleared by the time they arrived, they would be forced to turn back, leaving Guardian Team to their fate. They reached their final firing position, a narrow, wind-swept ledge overlooking the valley of death below. They were shivering, exhausted, and fighting the first stages of hypoxia, but their minds were clear, sharpened to a razor's edge by the cold and the adrenaline. Jock set up his spotting scope, its powerful lens cutting through the swirling snow, and began calling out targets. His voice a low, calm murmur, and there comes a steady anchor in the storm. I have 2 patrol leaders, coordinating the assault. Range 4,400 meters, Jocks reported. They're my targets. Confirmed, Anya replied, her voice steady. Cave entrance sentries are mine, 6 of them. Range 6,300. I'll take them on your signal. Executing, Jock said simply. The world seemed to hold its breath. Jocks's rifle boomed twice, the report swallowed almost instantly by the howling wind. Miles away, 2 figures crumpled into the snow, their coordinated assault thrown into chaos. Targets down, Jock said, his voice tight. Your fire, Commander. Anya's crimson rifle barked 6 times. The shots spaced so closely together they sounded like a single, stuttering burst. It was a symphony of controlled violence. Through his scope, Jocks watched in awe as, one by one, the sentries guarding the ice cave fell, each with a single, precise shot before they could even raise an alarm or understand what was happening. It was the work of a phantom. Path is clear, Jocks yelled into the comms. Guardian, you are clear to move. Go, go. Below, the pinned-down team broke from their cover, sprinting through the deep snow toward the designated extraction point as the thunderous beat of helicopter rotors began to fill the valley. The insurgents, now leaderless and confused, fired wildly into the whiteout. The last man to be pulled aboard the helicopter was Captain Alexei Romanov, his arm in a blood-soaked sling, but alive. As the bird lifted off, banking hard against the wind, he turned and looked back up at the ridge he knew his protégés were on. Even at a distance of over 6 kilometers, through the swirling chaos of the storm, his eyes seemed to lock with Anya's. He raised his good hand to his helmet in a weary, grateful salute. Anya, watching through her scope, felt a single, warm tear freeze on her cheek. Back at the forward base, the atmosphere was one of subdued triumph. General Thorne was waiting for them, his usually stern face etched with profound relief and admiration. He looked at Anya and Jocks, seeing not just two soldiers, but a new kind of weapon, a perfect fusion of instinct and intellect. He commended Anya for a flawless mission, one that would be written into the classified annals of SOCOM history. Then he turned to Jocks. "Master Gunnery Sergeant," Thorne said, his voice resonating with sincerity. "What you did up there? Putting aside ego for the sake of the mission. That is the heart of what we do. The Phoenix Initiative is not just for prodigies, it's for the best. I'm extending you an invitation." It wasn't an order. It was a request, an offer to step into a world beyond anything he had ever known. Later, as the Crimson Rifle was being cleaned and cased with a reverence usually reserved for a holy relic, Jocks found Anya alone, watching the storm finally begin to break over the mountains. The rivalry between them was gone, replaced by the unbreakable bond forged in shared extremity. "I have to ask," Jocks said quietly, his voice full of a new respect. "The rifle. Why that color?" Anya looked at the cased weapon, and her gaze soft. "Its color wasn't for vanity," she explained, her voice low. "It was for memory. Alexi's daughter. She was my best friend. She died from a rare illness when she was 15. The day before she passed, she was painting a model airplane. This exact color. She made me promise I would carry it with me, so a part of her would always see the world. I painted this rifle with the last of her paint." She turned to face him, her eyes clear and resolute. "It wasn't a boast. It was a vow, a promise never to forget who we fight for." When Jocks quietly asked what it truly meant, Elena's answer was simple but immovable. "It means the promise and the cost live on." As their transport lifted off, climbing back into the turbulent sky, Jocks looked out the window at the vast, unforgiving landscape below. He realized that his life, with its clear rules and defined enemies, had been simple. Now, he was stepping into the world of ghosts and promises written in blood. Nothing would ever feel ordinary again. Anya's story is a powerful reminder that we should never judge a book by its cover, or in this case, a warrior by the color of her rifle. Her journey teaches us that true strength isn't loud and boastful. It's often quiet, disciplined, and forged in promises we make to ourselves and to the people we love. Her crimson rifle wasn't a sign of weakness, but a symbol of her deepest source of power, her legacy and her purpose. It's a lesson in perseverance, in the incredible power of fusing meticulous preparation with profound intuition. We all have storms to face in our lives, challenges that seem impossible. But like Anya, we can learn to be the calm in that storm, to use our unique skills and our deepest motivations to hit targets we never thought possible. Let me ask you this. Have you ever underestimated someone based on a first impression, only to be completely amazed by their true abilities later on? And more personally, what is your crimson rifle? What is that one symbol, the one promise you carry with you that gives you strength when you need it most? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your stories. I wish you all the best of health and a week full of purpose and strength. And if you enjoyed this story and want to explore more journeys into the depths of human potential, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It truly helps the channel grow. Thank you for listening.